Alrighty, so we're in year 5 of homeschooling. This is like year 3 or 3, I think, of homeschooling within a homeschool co-op. But I thought it would be just important to share how I got from being public school educated to wanting to homeschool my daughter. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about it real quick. It's not really a long, lengthy story, but it's important. I think it's important, especially for those who watch this who are like considering homeschooling, who are first time homeschoolers. I think it's important to understand sort of like some of the thought processes that we go through to make that decision to educate our own children.
Okay, let's go.
Alright, so let me start here. I was not homeschooled. No one I know, no one I grew up with was homeschooled. Every single person that I ever grew up with, including myself, we went to public school. From kindergarten on through high school, etc. We went to public school. Now, I up until third grade, like up until second grade, third grade-ish, I went to predominantly black schools. So everybody looked like me, black and brown people, black and brown teachers, etc. But then my cousin and I lived with my cousin. We ended up going to a predominantly white elementary school in third grade. And so this is where, like, it was a big culture shock. This is where I realized that the way certain cultures and populations were educated was very different than the way I had been educated in my black and brown communities, right? I remember third grade, and not just being shocked at all of the people who did not look like me and all the teachers who did not look like me. That was a culture shock. But also I remember something with my glasses. I remember coming to school from the summer. We came right off of the summer. The summer had just ended, and it was like the first weeks of school, and the teachers were asking questions that I had no idea what the answers were. But the other students who were of a different culture, they knew exactly what she was asking. The teacher was referencing books and readings that were done that I had not done. Like, I think they had like a reading list over the summer, or like, yeah, they had like a reading list over the summer, or like things that they were doing over the summer, like summer reading books or whatever that kids had read. And so when the children got back to school, it was like the first week, they were answering questions about books that they had read all summer. Meanwhile, I spent the summer playing, lollygagging, doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? Age step foot in the library, for real, like, so it was like different. It was that moment that I realized, like, okay, our educational processes are different. Our expectations from our families are different. Like, something's different here, right? So that was the beginning of that. From third until fifth, it took me that long to start adjusting to being in spaces with people who felt way more advanced than me. Like, it felt like they were doing things that were leaps and bounds beyond what I could do academically. And so those were my elementary years, just me feeling inadequate, me feeling ill-prepared. It wasn't until I was in college and I was reflecting back on my studies that I realized that, how do I put this? The resources and the education in, let's say, the black and brown communities, or the communities that didn't have finances, the financial income, those resources and that education was not on the same level as those who had money to hire tutors weekly and throughout the summer, and those who had monies to put into their schools, so that their schools were better equipped with computers and better books and blah blah blah. Like, it took me until I was in college to like look back and reflect on, like, okay, there's a difference between how the black and brown babies are being educated, or the babies without finance, a lot of money are being educated, versus the others, right? And so, long story short, I was public school educated. I excelled academically. Like, I excelled academically, but I think that was mostly because I'm naturally an intellect. I'm naturally intellectual. And so learning and education and book smarts has always come easy to me. Call it, a perk of being a Gemini or having all this mind and brain power. But I excelled academically, but I can remember self-esteem wise and knowing my identity, that took a hit. Because of how I was like the only white person, the only black person in a predominantly white class or school, or I was the one of few black people in predominantly white spaces. My sense of identity connected to my culture, that took forever for me to find that and to build that, because that was not nurtured in those predominantly white spaces. And then there was just something that felt like, people of color or black people, like we were inferior or we were less prepared than our counterparts, right? And so we had to work like twice as hard to be respected or to be eligible for certain things, where my white counterparts, they did not have to work as diligently. Now, some of them did, because that's just their nature. They were academics, But it was something. There was something very off about, or something very, I guess, not equal, not fair about how I was experiencing academia and learning and education, etc. So that's some of my experience. The other thing I will say about public school is that, and I didn't know this when I was going through it, but this is me reflecting back. Once I got into college, I started reflecting back. The other thing I noticed was that the curriculum was very intentionally leaving things out. It was very intentionally focusing on some specific aspects of history and academics, and it was specifically leaving certain things out. I also realized that the testing, the standardized tests were they were focused on areas that black and brown students were not excelling in, and so they were kind of misrepresenting our level of intelligence. They weren't really capturing our level of intelligence. And I guess the last thing that I noticed about being public school trained or educated was that we were graded in ways that didn't quite capture our intelligence. Like we received grades for doing work. We didn't necessarily receive grades for understanding what we were doing or being able to regurgitate what we were doing, like intentionally. Like we received good grades, high grades for turning in work on time, doing the assignments exactly the way the teacher wanted us to do it, not the way we instinctively or intuitively would like to do it. We were graded well if we did the thing the way our authority figures told us to do the thing. We were our uniqueness and our individuality was not nurtured, and our freedom of thinking was not a thing. That was not welcomed. You think the way we tell you to think, or you get a negative mark. Your paper gets all the red ink, whatever. So that was my experience growing up. Obviously, I rose to the occasion. I figured out how to play the game, and like I said, I excelled. That's just what it is. But I excelled because I figured out how to play the game, not because someone nurtured my innate, abilities and strengths, and because they played to like me, so they learned my learning style. Not that. That's not why I excelled. I excelled because I learned how to play the game. right? So fast forward, I end up having my daughter, and even when she was in utero, and her dad and I were just talking about how we wanted to raise her, he gave me a lot of I was the one who was kind of pushing for homeschool, for a number of academic reasons. He supported homeschool because he ain't, people were shooting up schools and safety reasons, and he didn't want teachers like disrespecting her, and then we had to go up there and smile on our mugshot, you know what I'm saying, trying to defend her. Like, he didn't want those situations, so he did support homeschooling, but I supported it for like a few different reasons, and so had my daughter, realized like I don't actually trust the public school teachers or the public schools in our area to educate her on herself, to cultivate that natural love of education. In fact, I thought they might snuff it out of her. I was actually concerned that like if she went to public school, that natural desire she has to learn and that natural light of hers would be dimmed, because she would have to do everything the way she was told to do it in school, and she would have to sit at this time, and she would have to learn by worksheets, and she would have to, like it would kill all of the natural adventuring explorer type of education that she had in her. And so we made the decision to homeschool and have an ounce of experience. Didn't know nothing, so of course we had to join some homeschool groups and things like that. And I took the lead on homeschooling her, but we did that, and what I discovered was that she wasn't forced to learn by a certain age. She wasn't being graded or judged harshly because she didn't reach certain milestones by certain ages. She wasn't pressured. She was challenged to do things, and she rose to the occasion. She rose to the challenges, but she wasn't pressured. She wasn't judged harshly, and she had this confidence about her in learning, and she had this love of learning. She still has it. She's 10 now, and she's entering into the fifth grade curriculum, fifth grade, sixth grade curriculum, and she has a natural love of learning, and I believe that's because of the way that she has been allowed to learn, and the way that she's been allowed to find her own flow within learning. And I strongly believe that if we sent her to public school, she would be like most of her friends who are in public school. She would hate it. They look forward to Friday because they don't have to deal with the teachers, the students, the rigid schedules, the rigid testing, the judging, the grading. They don't have to deal with that over the weekends. Whereas my daughter, she wants more days of homeschool co-op. She wants to go to her homeschool cooperative more days. Like, she's like looking forward to it, and that's what I want. We're not doing more days because I don't have the social battery, but she has a desire to learn or to be in educational spaces, learning spaces, and that is the exact outcome that I was hoping to cultivate. And so anyway, that's how we got from public school to homeschooling. Zozo has never, my daughter Zozo, she has never been public schooled. She did a little stint in daycare, just because we wanted to kind of give her some time to get away from us and us get away from her and build some healthy attachment. So I think she was like 2. She did like a couple months, like maybe a little bit over 6 months, less than 10 months, and we did it. And then they told her to take her waist beads off, and I was like, well, this is not gonna work. It's us, it's not you. We're gonna take her. And that was all she wrote. So she did that, but she's never been to public school. Right now what we're doing, and I'll talk more about this in another video, right now what we're doing is we are part of a homeschool cooperative that has classes 10 to 3 multiple days a week, and she's doing different subjects with other people who are teaching her. So she has classes that way. She's doing outschool.com for her other classes, and then we do some things at home just here and there, but mostly she is taught by others, because I just feel like I feel like that's good for us right now. I feel like she needs a mom right now, not a teacher in me, and so I had to make a choice. You know, I'm happy to make that choice. And so that's how we got there. Those are some of the things that I had to consider when considering homeschool. Like, you know, how much did I want her to learn with a certain level of enjoyment? Because you're not going to get a lot of enjoyment learning in public schools, unfortunately. You might have one or two great teachers, but for the most part, your teachers are mean, they're stressed, they're overworked, they're underpaid, and they're harsh. They're harsh. That's just what it is. And I get it, because they are in the circumstances that they're in. But I wanted her to enjoy. I wanted to measure how much she would enjoy learning. I wanted to have a little bit more say-so in what she was learning. I'm not simply just going to teach her certain curriculum that the powers that be say are important. I also want to insert some things that I believe are important for her to learn at this stage of development. I wanted her to have a certain freedom to learn and reach her milestones in a more leisurely fashion, more than just being stressed out about a grade that she has to get in order to pass this or she's going to fit. And I wanted her to learn without being graded. I wanted to give her feedback, but I don't want her to be graded or grade herself and thus begin to harshly judge herself based off of these fake grades. So that was that. Those are some of the important things that I considered when deciding to homeschool her. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to record a few more videos just about how we homeschool, what we're doing homeschooling, some lesson plans, and some of those details. But just wanted to start off saying, you know, just because you know you were raised a certain way, that doesn't mean you have to raise your children that way. Sometimes we're raised a certain way and we figured out that that's not the way. That's not the way, and we could do things differently, and we could be the first ones in our family to do them. And it's fine if you don't have it all figured out, because nobody says you have to. Just get started, connect with people who are on the same path, find your resources, and try it. All right, peace, y'all.